Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris Thomas. This video will be about safe locations for the country of Brazil. Before we get too far, I want to show you how to turn on closed captioning. You go to the CC right there, you click on the CC, that will turn it on. You'll see my words converted to text. Then you go to the gear icon and click on subtitles, then go down to auto translate and you'll scroll down to Portuguese and then just restart the video and you'll see the Portuguese appear at the bottom of the video. I also want to show you how to speed up my video, as I've been accused of slow speech. So if you were to go to the gear icon again here and just click on speed, now what you'll see is normal. So if you were to choose 1.25 as a speed up, that will speed up my delivery and make it a little bit easier for those people who need me to speak faster. So this video has been a long time coming. My last video was a year ago, and that was this one here, a safe location for Australia and New Zealand. So I've been wanting to do this video for a long time, and well, now it's time. But I wanted just to give you a little information about myself. I became Planet X aware in October of 2007. And I was reading this website called ZetaTalk.com, and I'd seen it before, but this time I decided, well, I'll read a little bit of it. So I got reading. It was about 10 minutes in, and I realized all at once, oh my God, this is true. And it just came on me all at once. So ever since then, I started to study this website, and during that process I was working on a social networking site that was related to ZetaTalk, and I was invited in as an admin, so I was working there for about a year and a half. But early on I noticed that people were asking questions that seemed like they couldn't understand what was going on. And well, no kidding, because most of the concepts involved with prior pole shifts and Planet X, or Nibiru has many names, or the pole shift itself, they're all totally out of the box. So, but as I answered what questions I could answer and help people, I realized that, well, hold it, I understand this very easily. It's just the way my mind works. And I thought, well, what can I do about that? So I decided to start my own newsletter called the Planet X Newsletter. I'll show you an example of it in a minute. So I started in, and I would take whatever ZetaTalk was discussing at the time, and this would have been way down here. Way down here. Way down here. So whatever, started about 2009, I think, 2008, 2009, 2008. So, I was taking these, whatever was in these newsletters. And now this is Nancy Leader, the creator of ZetaTalk, doing the descriptions and putting together the newsletter, and she does a great job. But I thought, well, I could put my own slant on it. So I took this information here, this example on here, I read that, and then I would reduce it down into something that people could understand and integrate it all into an article. So that's what I did. I did 18 issues. Probably if you were to Google, you could probably Google up Planet X newsletter. So I did 18 issues in a year and a half. And I took a break for a few months. And so I decided, well, I'm going to start back in again. So I started back in with a second set. And well, I got to the 5th newsletter. And I did a shift. Now here's an example. This is newsletter number 10 in the first issue. This is the way I worked with illustrations and pictures and stuff. So I was halfway through issue number 5, which still is still sitting there unfinished, and I thought, well, God, there's got to be a better way to reach more people. And that's when I decided, well, that's when I did this. I had done this video here, and I thought, well, hold it. I'll just do videos. So that's how I got involved in doing my video channel. So I covered the history of Planet X, various things, and then I moved into safe locations, because the big question for people is, okay, so what? There's a pole shift, but where do I go? So I covered the US first, because that was my largest readership or viewership. Then I did 4 videos on Canada. I did the UK, a couple of small videos, and safe locations for Australia and New Zealand. So as I said, I've been thinking about doing Brazil for a long time because of what's happening in Brazil. So I'm going to be getting into all of that. Just wanted to show you a few of the tools. Of course, I use ZetaTalk. It's the greatest on the internet. Then I use a flood map. As you can see here is a little precursor as to what I'll be talking about. The dark blue is permanent sea. So you can see Brazil is going to be shrunk quite a bit. So this is a tool I use. And in my videos, I zoom in quite close. And to put my maps together for Brazil or any of the countries, I zoom in. And I'll take a screenshot of that. And I'll move over, take a screenshot, and move over, take a screenshot, move over, take a screenshot, move over, take a screenshot. That's the way I did it. That's the way how I built the maps. So you'll see the maps shortly. So that's one tool. And of course, ZetaTalk. And here's an example of one of the maps. So this map is very large. You can zoom in and you can look at see the roads in your towns. Another fantastic thing that's happening to Brazil is a new landmass is going to emerge from the sea. So this map explains that, and I'll be getting into descriptions about that. This is you can see this is my Facebook group. This is my website where I upload the videos as well, and I also do some writing about philosophy of approaching the pole shift and how to get ready and stuff like that. So here you can see all my videos. I did 31 videos, and now this is my last week's calendar. So I took the basic ZetaTalk calendar and I illustrated it and made it a little nicer looking. But the huge difference with my last week's calendar is the date of the pole shift is included here. So that's what this map is all about. So I have a link to this one, also a very large file. So that's a little bit about me and my history, and so that's about it. Now, so we'll head into description about what Planet X is, its trajectory and its orbit, and how the pole shift actually does happen. Okay, in this section I'm going to explain what Planet X is, how it is moving through our solar system, how it got here, and how essentially it's going to cause a pole shift, and more specifically how it's going to affect Brazil. What we have here is an actual real picture of Planet X. This was taken from the US in about the year 2002. This is Planet X incoming very fast. You can see, I'll be referring to this later, you can see this cloud around it. That cloud is full of iron oxide dust, red dust, which is classic pre-pole shift by a few days signs that it is coming, but you'll know it's here, about to happen. Also, it is full of rock, asteroid, bits of planets, and also it has accompanying moon swirls. There's two of them, basically, on each side. And from my best recollection, I think there's about 30 moons in all. Some of them are the size of our moon, and a lot of them are smaller, but they rotate around each other. And so this is an incoming picture of Planet X. Now, this is probably a red filter on the camera, but however, Planet X does appear to be red in the sky when you see it from your safe location a few days, perhaps even a week beforehand. So this is its basic trajectory. Our sun has a dark twin, also known as Planet 9, and Planet X orbits between the two. It's called a sling orbit. And on its incoming trajectory, it zooms in very fast and comes up to Earth's, rather the solar system, ecliptic. This model here shows what the ecliptic is. It's the disk on which all the planets orbit. Now, please remember, this is a greatly abridged, very brief explanation. There's a whole lot of other things happening here, but I'm just giving you the basics. Now, Planet X is a dwarf star, a cooled dwarf star, and as you saw earlier, it is surrounded by lots of trash, a huge tail about 5 million miles long. So it zooms in, comes around to, and comes up to, tries to go through, and can't quickly. It's very, very slow movement because of the sun's ecliptic. Now that's all the particle flows on the ecliptic. They leave the sun like that. Imagine it's a magnetic field like that. Well, a magnetic field is involved because the sun is our solar system's dominant magnet. So the forces of direction are like this and like this. Go out, right, and they go up and out. And the extent that they go out this far, how far this extent is called the heliosphere. That bubble is called the heliosphere. Now, Planet X arrived from the direction of Orion. Now, this image seems to indicate that it's above the ecliptic. It's not. It's actually below. It's just the perspective that I drew this at. So it arrived from Orion on December the 25th, 2003. And so it arrived in the or near the orbit of Venus. So, and it's been creeping along ever since because of the particle flows on the ecliptic. Now, Earth came to a stop, an orbital stop at that time, because it couldn't pass through, because Planet X is a magnetic gravitational monster compared to Earth. So Earth had can't go around it because of the orbital forces that keep planets in their orbits. It's to do with particle flows from the sun. They keep this is why planets orbit on a track, because there's forces that keep them in that track. So Earth couldn't go around it, so it just simply came to a stop, an orbital stop at that time. Now, Planet X is moving at an upward angle, like so. That's its direction of movement. We'll switch back to this here. So when Planet X rises, finally makes it through the ecliptic, above the ecliptic here, when it becomes above the ecliptic, then it has the opportunity to escape the solar system. As it does so, it gets closer to Earth, and as it rises in the ecliptic, it has to turn its magnetic poles so they're laying in line with the sun's magnetic lines of force. Remember, the sun is a dominant magnet, so it has to obey the sun's magnetic lines of force. So as it lays over, it points its north pole towards Earth. Now, this model doesn't really enable me to explain it. This might be easier here. So as Planet X lays over on its side, the north pole pointing at Earth, and its south pole pointing at the sun. Now, by the way, its south pole is the reason why the solar system, the sunspot on the sun have stopped appearing. Now, science is telling you something different, but this is the fact: is that the south pole of Planet X is drawing in a lot of the sun's extra energy, so it's causing the sunspots to disappear. So, as Planet X points its north pole at Earth, what happens is several things at this point. Now, before I go on with what's happening, meanwhile, Earth has stopped rotating. The reason it stops rotating is I'm about to explain. As you see, the mid-Atlantic ridge has accumulated for millions and millions of years, because every time there's a pole shift, Eurasia and Africa want to move this way, and North America and South America want to move this way. They want to spread, because the Pacific is drawing those continents into it. So the Pacific is compressing and the Atlantic is expanding. Now, what has happened is that the magma has been released from below the continents, and is cooled and created this very large magnetic field here, very large mountain range. It's 10,000 miles long. Now, magma is full of iron, which is why, well, we could talk about a number of reasons things that are happening today, but we were just going to stick to this, and that is becomes very magnetic. So if you actually look at the Earth's magnetic field, the models that NASA has provided, you'll see, when you turn the globe, you'll see pictures of the globe, you'll see magnetic lines of force streaming out from the right out from the Atlantic, not the Pacific, the Atlantic. The reason for that is because this mountain range is magnetic. Now, so since it's magnetic, and since Planet X is moving from the direction of the sun, that means I put us in the position here of the observer, looking at the Earth as Planet X approaches it, because this magnet on Earth's surface has stopped the rotation of Earth, because as Planet X gets closer, its rotation slows. Now this is in antiquity. There's all kinds of writings that refer to a stopped Earth, a rotational stop of Earth, where the sun stays in a certain part of the sky, depending on where you are around the Atlantic, for 6.5 days. This is part of the old ancient writings. Now, we'll go back to the model. So what happens is that Planet X approaches Earth, but is rising, so it passes by Earth. At that same time, Earth will be drawn out of its orbital track, and it rises to get closer to Planet X. It won't touch Planet X, but it does rise, and this was prophesied by a famous psychic called Baba Vanga, and you can research that for 2023. Earth shall leave her orbit, and that's what happens. Earth temporarily leaves her orbit and then bobs back down, and continues the orbit, its orbit around the sun after the pole shift. However, now, so what happens again is Planet X is pointing its north pole at Earth. So what happens now? It gets closer. The north pole of Planet X, as it's passing by Earth, grabs hold of Earth's south pole and jerks it up and separates the outer crust of Earth from the inner core, because a great deal of Earth, Earth's inner, the mid parts of Earth, is liquid magma. So it's jerked up and separated because Planet X is moving very fast at this point, and just zooms out overhead of Earth after it does the pole shift. So what happens then, as you can see, now we know by ZetaTalk, which is, I said earlier, is far and away the best source of information about Planet X and the pole shift. They've calculated that the pole shift will be at 90-degree tip. So it pulls it up. So that puts the current poles on the equator. Here's the north, and here's the south. So what happens is that it wouldn't matter even if the poles were, it's not going to be that way, but even if they were like only 30 degrees, they're all going to melt anyways, which is why you have old writings about the Great Flood. But it's 90 degrees. So what happens? So what happens now? Well, let's look at where the North Pole is. Right here off of Recife. So that puts the North Pole off the coast of Brazil, east coast of Brazil. Now when you look at this S-shaped mountain range, at the time of Earth's stoppage prior to the pole shift, Earth is standing upright. Now it is not on a tilt. Those days are gone now. It's standing up. I'm not saying it's standing up right now. It's wobbling right now because of the offset poles reacting to the presence of Planet X approaching. So we have an upright Earth, and what happens is you have a mean longitude. Is my best term, I guess, for that. So what happens is that, as I said, it's pulled up like so, and that places the North Pole somewhere in this here, like so. I would guess it would be about there. Now this distance is about, if I remember correctly, is about 1,500, 2,000 miles, somewhere like that. So we have, so that's the actual, that's why it's such a dramatic event for Brazil, because it's hosting the new North Pole. So we'll move on to the next section. This is an addendum to the earlier part of the video where I discussed Planet X and the pole shift and how it occurs. I get a lot of questions, and rightly so, as to, well, if Earth is stopped in orbit, how is it that the seasons have continued? Now I'm going to explain exactly how that is done. But before I do that, you have to consider that if we had seasons that were 7 years long, over, now it's been 15 years we've had a stopped Earth. So what would happen to the world's, number one, the weather alone would it be static. So you'd have no growing of food in the, well, let me see now, that was Christmas, that's the northern hemisphere, so that means that we would have midwinter for 7 years in the northern hemisphere. And in the southern hemisphere, you would have a summer that was 7 years long. What's that going to do with the crops, the monetary systems? Everything would be destroyed. They couldn't. Earth's economies and the governments can barely handle a big wind. When a big wind blows through, a big hurricane happens, they can barely handle that. So it would destroy humanity alone, just on that alone. So this is why the seasons haven't been simulated, because of that reason. How is it being done? Well, some people are not going to like this explanation, but this is the facts. ET Tech has been assisting Earth for, well, it's been around Earth for millions of years. ETs have been landing here and interacting with humans for a very, very, very long time. It's only in the last couple hundred years that it's been denied by current science. It's a basic denial of governments not to, and religions, to not talk about ETs, prior ET visits. It's been a verboten subject. So, but in fact, ET influence has been on Earth for a very long time. But we don't need to get into that. But I'm going to get into the specifics here. What is going on? There is a grid built around Earth, a spherical grid of UFOs. Now, UFOs is a very crude term, extremely crude, because of the denial of the government to admit the presence of ETs, thinking that we're the only living creatures in the entire physical universe. Oh, I won't go there. It's just so stupid. I'm sorry. Anyways, so ETs been helping us, and they've set up a spherical grid around Earth, 360 degrees, and there's thousands of ships involved. And what they do is they slowly, bit by bit, are tipping the Earth to simulate the natural progression of seasons. And then they'll tip it back the other way, like so. Because really, for seasons, Earth just needs to tip. Whether Earth is on one side of the sun or the other, we don't know. You can't look out at the stars and know that. Now maybe if somebody with well, astronomer can, because they have the equipment, but the average human has no clue. If they didn't know what season it was, they wouldn't know what size where you are on the orbit track. That's a reality. So Earth just needs to be tipped. That's the only thing that needs to happen, and that's why the seasons have been continued, because of this. Now also they have openings that allows spaceships to come and go. As you know, as most of us know, the ETs have been, the UFOs have been sighted all over the Earth for years now, and it's been increasing. I mean, unless you're living under a rock, or you don't have a computer and you never watch, and only thing you watch is TV 2 hours a day, the main news, you're not going to know this. But the fact is, they're all over the place, and they're actually, what they're doing is they're actually warning you, us. So, but that's another, like I say, there's a lot going on, and I'm just giving you the basics. But that's how the seasons are being continued, and that's how spaceships or probes or what have you are able to escape the sphere, because the sphere has openings and they allow these things out, and that's a fact. So this is the segment of the video where I go right into the safe locations for Brazil. So, as an addendum to the intensity of the pole shift, I felt it was important to show you this. I drew this up years ago as part of my newsletters. And each little colored numbered spot are the locations of the prior North Poles, geographic North Poles. Obviously, this one is the current. So as you can see, the prior pole shifts were not that far apart. So 2, 4, and then here we are over Canada over here at 21,300 years ago, approximately. And this explains, by the way, ice ages. Ice ages, as is known today, is a euphemism for prior pole shifts, because every time there's a pole shift, the North Pole will move. So naturally, the ice deaccumulates the old locations and reaccumulates the new location. So it's a receding and growing and apparent moving of the ice, where all it really was is just the relocation of a geographical pole shift by the movement of the crust. So I'm showing you this because is as an example of the much greater intensity of this coming pole shift, which is, as you've seen by my video, is going to be 90 degrees. So it's a very intense pole shift, and it's basically, it's the closer Planet X passes by Earth in this exit from the solar system, the more intense the pole shift will be. So this is an intense one. I want to talk briefly about the third secret of the Fatima. I wrote this up in English years ago as part of my newsletter series. And I thought this was apropos because, well, Sister Lucia was Portuguese. But the story is basically that she and her two cousins were visited by a, now I believe it's, she writes it in her letter to the Pope as Mother Mary. Now, I'm not religious, but I do take truth wherever I can find it. So her experience with her cousins was about the pole shift. Now, if you read into it, the children were very, very disturbed by the images that they were given. So this is Mother Mary giving instruction to them, basically giving a message to the world through the Catholic Church to the world about the pole shift. Unfortunately, the Pope that the letter was given to, the third secret of the Fatima, was chose not to share that with the world. And Sister Lucia was basically annexed for the rest of her life as a result. So that's the reality. Now, there's a lot more. I can't read this, of course, but this is the article I wanted you to read, and there's the other half. Now, I will be putting this article up as a link under Show More. So Brazil is, as of 2018, it's about 211 million people. But the pole shift is known to kill 90% of the people simply because they're not aware of it. So, and around the coasts, because the pole shift waves that will assault the coast. Now you can imagine the Earth crust is moving, the oceans will move with the crust, but when Earth comes to the stop at the 90-degree point, the oceans keep going. So many people die from what we call pole shift waves washing inland. Now, so most of the people are on the coast. Interesting thing about survival for the pole shift is that people who are inland don't have to worry about the ocean. So they die from earthquakes. So there's a great many people, there's many more people that survive the pole shift in the inland areas. So that would be the central area here. Now, so that means basically that 90% of the population is immediately wiped out. So that means there's a lot more land available for the living. It's crude, but that's the reality. So keep that in mind. So this particular map I drew up to give you a basic idea. Now I'll be going into more detail, but a basic idea as to what the livable land will be like for Brazil. Now you can see the white, the area that's whited out, that will be the new Arctic Circle, approximately through here. Now I'll be getting into more detail in a minute. The red zone at the bottom is basically a dead zone for Brazil proper. Of course, that includes all of Uruguay and eastern Argentina as well, which will receive a massive amount of water, more so than the rest of the world does, which I'll explain, which is the new land that's coming up between the tip of South America and Africa. But this is a death zone. So this is just a general idea of the type, the danger area. Now, the Amazon basin will receive an initial wash from the pole shift waves. They'll wash in, but they will drain. So they won't go to the extent of the Amazon basin. They'll just wash in and obviously take out the population that's along the river there. Then eventually, of course, within a number of weeks, there will be a certain amount of drainage. Now, we'll get into a little more detail about that in a minute. So here we have representation of the pole melt. You can see here. Now this occurs because, as I said earlier, that the ice caps melt and raise the Earth's sea level by approximately 675 feet. So the Amazon is really low, which is why it's flooded. Now this happens very slowly. I calculated it's about at 10 or about 9 or 10 inches a day. So this starts immediately after the pole shift and just slowly eats up the land. So that means that whoever survived the pole shift will see the sea slowly advancing on them. So they'll pick stuff up and move it up to higher ground, and then the sea will keep coming, and then they'll pick the stuff up again and move it to high ground again. So that'll be the cycle until they reach the final high ground that they need to go. Now, of course, all you need to do is consult this map. Now, this map, a better map is coming up. So this is to give you an idea as to what the migration will be like. So here I'm focusing on what's left of Venezuela and the countries along the north coast here, the northeast coast. They're going to be migrating to these areas. Now I've outlined the green just as Brazil, but obviously it's not going to matter in those days where a boundary is. Now these areas will be assaulted by migrants looking for high ground. So that is a dangerous situation. Now I know that these areas are extreme dense jungle. So I would imagine, and I know there's not very many people living here. I've looked, and there's very few people in there. But if a person is set up in here, whatever, in their home in a little town, so there's very few little towns up here. But I'm sure they can make a go of it because it's so dense. It's not like they can see a smoke trail traveling. In Canada you can see a smoke trail for tens of miles, a very long distance. But this is very dense. So, but it's not a recommended safe location mainly because of the migrants who will be eating bad food, drinking bad water. So what's going to happen? They're going to be carrying diseases. They're going to be sick, and they're going to be desperate. So what the basic sort of approach is that you stay hidden for about 2 to 3 years in your safe location. And then the sick, because there'd be no medical doctors, there'd be no hospitals. I doubt if there's any hospitals up here anyways, but there's not going to be any medical help from it's going to be non-existent. So people will die from these diseases. Now there will be a small percentage of people, it's about 2 to 3%, will be carriers of disease. So it's a very dicey situation as to whether you want to admit a new person, a survivor, to your group. So you want to use omens, or what I call waking dreams. These are omens that are like sweet dreams, only you're awake. And these indications will indicate to you whether that person is good for you or not. And then there's usually bird calls are great, fantastic bird call. If you're looking at a person and you're wondering what kind of person they would be for your community, and they're standing there or they're coming at a distance, and one of your favorite birds lands on a branch next to you and starts to make a beautiful call, that's a positive sign. But if it's some other bird or some other creature that is dangerous or unpleasant for some reason, makes a raucous call at that time, then that's a warning. So it can take many different forms. It could be somebody could be saying something in a different group. Waking dreams or omens use anything at all, any route into your awareness to tell you, to give you good information about your safety and about anything that'll help you. So that's a very brief example. So that's just an example. So, okay, so let's move on. Now this, as I said, I didn't mention this in the introduction, but this presentation here, right now, it's in the form of a presentation file, but I will output this in the form of a PDF, so you can download this and read it. So you won't have to download the video, you just download this object, and it'll be a PDF. You can download that. So you can read that. So the same thing that's happening to this area will be happening to this portion of Western. Now, please, I'm strictly English speaking. I have no other languages, but I believe it's called Acker, the state of Acker. The extreme western portion here will be suffering the same fate with migrants moving to the high ground. No, I'm not saying these aren't good safe locations. That's an excellent safe location. These are excellent for safe locations. But how you manage the migrants depends on whether you live or whether you die. So if you're here and you're confident that you're hidden and you can maintain that, then that's a good safe location. Because this whole inland sea is going to be, one fantastic place for food. Food is a big concern for people preparing for the after time, after the pole shift, because food will production will virtually stop. So people have to do their own growing, and I know, well, Brazil is a fantastically diverse country. Here in Canada, we just go to the store and we buy what we want, and we take it home and cook it, right? So we don't produce our own food here in the townships and the cityships of Canada or the U.S. We go to the store and buy it, right? So that'll stop too. So but the sea will be one fantastic place to get food. This inland sea, it'll be totally amazing. So these are a wonderful, safe locations all along the back of the east side of the Andes here. As I said, it's all about how you manage to deal with, or not to interface with the migrants in the first years after the pole shift. Once that they've died off, God bless them. These are wonderful locations. Provided, of course, you have yourself a community, and you set up your rules of the community, and you have your enough people to make sure that things are running smoothly. But that's a whole other subject. Right now, I just want to talk about where it's safe and where it's not, and what you got to look out for. So the other thing is, I actually forgot to put in these maps, is the same thing that's happening to these areas over here with the migration is going to happen along this area here too. So the people that are living in the Amazon jungle are going to be forced to move towards the Cerrado. So homeowners, and rather landowners along these areas, are going to have to deal with that. So that's a reality people will have to deal with in this area. I don't imagine that migrants are going to move too far, because don't forget, they're on foot. And so if they settle, they find dry land here, and they're able to stay there and make up some arrangements with the landowners, and whether the landowners are still alive or not, that's all good, because they'll park right there next to the sea. There's no reason for them to come deep into the Cerrado, because the sea there. So you might keep that in mind, that they're not likely to be driving deep into the Cerrado, because I believe the Cerrado is really one fantastic safe location. If you can organize and get yourself into this, somehow, away from the migrants, deeper into the Cerrado, and set up your community, that would be an excellent way to do a survival, because there's lots of rivers, as you know, in this area here, so there's food there. Now in the Ava time, there's going to be a lot of volcanoes going off, so growing food is not going to be that as easy as you may think. The skies will be grayed out at the stratosphere level for 10 to 15 years, so you'll have to grow low light crops. So the sea will be giving you majority of your food, initially at least. So that's a fact. So let's move on. Oh, this video, watch this video. Made this video up because I discovered where that land was going to raise from the bottom of the sea. This is the Scotia plate here. So that new landmass rises from, so I discovered it because I was researching. I've been looking for, actually for quite a while, for a number of, maybe even over a year, trying to see where it is, because ZetaTalk did not say exactly where the new land was going to be. But I discovered a video, which you saw a section of on YouTube. And I saw this, and it was on an entirely different subject, but it involved the Scotia Plate. And I noticed that it was rising. So that will be the new land rising from the bottom of the sea, being pushed up by all the continental action of during the pole shift. So we have, now my best guess, is 1,000-foot wavefront. It'll probably be in the form of multiple wavefronts that'll accumulate to 1,000 feet. That's just my best guess. So we're trying to err on the side of caution here. So when this land comes up in the pole shift, you'll have the pole shift waves happening, hitting the coast, plus all the water that was on top of this land. Now, how deep is the sea here? Let's call it a mile deep. That's a lot of water, and it's going to start flowing out. So that'll add to the pole shift waves and hit the highly populated area of southern coastal Brazil. Now it's going to wash right over Uruguay. So anybody you know living in Uruguay, get them to watch this video, because there's no way, it's a death zone. It's the same with eastern Argentina. This whole area here will be washed over severely by 700, 800 feet of water. So there's no possible way of surviving. So get your loved ones out if you're in this area here. So seawater funneling is the major danger when it comes to the pole shift waves, and most especially for south coast Brazil, because the wave front is not what we're used to, where it comes up and it goes down and you get this pulsating. It's not going to be like that at all. It's going to be a wave front that's basically level at the top of billions and billions of gallons of water, all pushing on that front. So it's a wave front. So it'll push way into up the valleys. Now, there isn't enough space or time to detail every possible route for the seawater. But I did, this is based on 2,000 feet height. So obviously, if we were to break away here and go to a map, we're going to use this. It's just as easy here. So this is set for 800. If we put 2,000 in, so you can see where I took that section from Rio de Janeiro in here like that. That's where that map section is right in here. So the water obviously is going to be a much higher velocity here at the coastal edges around here than it would be here. So this area here is very dangerous. If you're here, you have to be right up. See, if you're living, there's a town right here. And that, for example, this town right here, this is toast. There's no way. I would suggest, if you're living in this town along that road, I don't think it's survivable. Even though the blue is 2,000 feet, because roads always follow valley bottoms. So it's too easy for the water to push into these valleys. And here, it's more doable. You're higher and you're farther from the coast. But there's lots of safe areas in here. Let's take a look at the height here. We got 459. Let's click on it. We got 2,900 feet. Well, that would probably be safe. This area would probably be safe here, like that. But you wouldn't want to be any closer to the sea. You want to be in the central here. That gives you an idea. Obviously, this bluff here, all the land up here is all good. So it gives you an idea. Now, ignore this up here, because the water is not going to push all the way up anywhere. We're just talking about the coastal areas. So that's why I took this section here. It's just to show that the water will push up into valleys. So again, you really want to use your omens to talk to you, because it's it was virtually impossible to detail to all the models of these areas of what the water is going to do. So use your omens to talk to you. If you want to be arbitrary about your height, then move up in here. You're good up here, nice and high. So, the North Pole is coming to Brazil. So, that basically makes all of eastern Brazil, I should say all of this portion here, unlivable. Now, there is a possibility that the North Pole, so this circle, if you took this circle here, go back to the map. Go back to the map here. So that circle is like this here. Hope you can see that my cursor there, like that. So that puts the North Pole about here, which I think is quite reasonable when you consider that the mean longitude of the S is somewhere about here. Maybe it's closer to the middle. We don't know this. We just know that it's off the coast of Brazil. So if you put it here, a little farther out, maybe you'll have more livable land. But I wanted to err on for caution, because once the pole shift happens, it's going to be very difficult to move. If you save up, who knows if the bridges won't last. Bridges won't stand up for the pole shift. So if you ever got to cross any bridges, so you got to move somewhere along the ground, and you want to plan your route so there's no bridges or no low areas where a river is most certainly going to wash out the road. You want the roads all to be high, and not near any rivers, and no bridges. So if you have such a road, then it might be possible for you to start up your car, load stuff in, and move. So this is my best approximation here for So that's a reality that's coming to Brazil. Now you know. So this is my master safe location map. Now you can click on this and it'll take you to the big map. And this one is very large. So by the way, you won't be using this on your phone. Your phone won't load this map. Any of my maps won't load on the phone. You'll have to use a desktop computer or a laptop because they're just too big. So here we have, again, the North Pole, this zone here. Now I live myself in a zone like this down here, something like this, in southwestern Canada. So we have a cold snap once in a while in winter, a little bit of snow, and that's about it. Sometimes a lot of rain, but that's about it. So that's during the winter only. And we can have hot summers. Right? So that's in here. So this is a very crude example, okay, so from what I'm used to. So I've drawn a circle here of 6 months of snow and ice here. And bear in mind, this could move this way or could move that way. Probably more this way, if you catch my meaning. It's probably slightly better this way. If there's any error, it would be moving towards the East Coast. But if you want to be careful, then you want to consider this to be 6 months of ice and snow in this zone here. If you're in the Arctic Circle here, well, it's ice and snow, permanently frozen ground, all year round. So now this orange zone here is really just a warning zone in low areas. As I've mentioned, if you have any low areas that are access to the sea through a valley, so you have a valley that runs into this area here, that's where you have to be careful. It's not that the whole area is tons of, it's almost all safe location. It's just that it's you got to be very careful that you're not too low if you're anywhere in this area. I just felt that a 1,000-mile zone would be, that's actually told to me. I have a little bit of spiritual guidance, and they said to make it a 1,000-mile zone. So, but there's lots of perfectly safe and good land up here, as long as you're not too low, as I've said. And the same with up here too. No, actually that's another map. So this is all viable land. This is all up here. This is all permanent sea by 2025. So you can click on this, download it, and you can zoom into the map and help you make choices to where you want to live. Yeah, so this is the map where this area, as I said, there's a lot. It's just the limitation of the flood map is that I can't isolate it. Just puts a blank flood to the whole map. But all this is all good up here. It's all good up here too. So it's just this initial zone here. Now I've got and this one looks like a 100-mile zone of more severe danger. Right? So that would be like a slice here. So here would be a 100-mile slice, which is quite dangerous. You really got to be careful how high you are. And sort of a general safety zone out here. So I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Again, this map, you can click on it and you will be you can load the very large map for your planning of a safe location. Again, you can download this as a PDF. So finally, I just wanted to remind you that I think there's about 30 a little over 30 potential communicable diseases, and some of these diseases are survivable. Like cholera, for example, is survivable with treatment. So you really, people should have, organized communities really should have, make sure they have a doctor or a nurse as part of your community, and have all the appropriate books, because there will be no internet, and some medicines to deal with basic communicable diseases. So it's after the 2 or 3 years where you get a lot of the die-off of people. There's also the issue with criminal gangs. Now that's going to be happening. There's going to be no law and order. So criminal gangs will be operating. So that's another, actually, that probably be more important than survivors, is because they are sure to plunder your community if they find you. So you definitely want to find an area that's hidden and not easily found, and you want to keep your head low and be quiet, and no big fires with smoke trails in the sky where people can find you. You want to keep it quiet for the first 2 or 3 years or so, because what will happen is the gangs will kill each other off. That's a fact. That's going to happen. So you do have to be very careful, and of course you want to have the kind of tools you need to protect yourself, because it is a lawless environment. So I hope that you found my video helpful. It's been a long time coming, but so I'll answer any questions anyone may have in the comments section. And if you don't know, can't write English, then you can use Portuguese, and I can translate it and give people advice. So thank you very much for watching the video, and I'll be talking to you in the comments section.